on to your booties because we are kicking off TV, guys, and we're not looking back. My name is Matt.
I'm Brian, and I'm Matt's third favorite ginger.
Yep, that's it. And this week we are talking about. So I love these sorts of episodes because first of all, I did a ton of research, and I'm like, I need to come up with the best year for TV shows. It's like if you do a whole year, you get half of one season and then half of the other season since they start in fall and go to spring.
Oh.
So it was hard to figure out those things and get there. So
And while Matt was figuring out his year, I thought we were doing years plural. So I messaged Matt like, "Oh yeah, I got 5 years I could talk about." He's like, "Oh crap, I have one."
but I've got my like top year. So like there's no argument in my head of like this being the best year. But I've got another year to talk about too, which is kind of close actually to this one. But
I got two that are it's like they're tied. Um, Hey guys, Future Brian here. Matt and I are about to start talking about Paramount Plus, the new streaming service. Apparently, the recording started to glitch and cut out what we were talking about. So that's what we're about to start talking about. Now, back to the episode. I don't know. I think it may have actually already dropped today.
And by today, then that would be like what 2 or 3 weeks ago. So this episode is probably going to post after even our WandaVision episode with our special guest Terrence Talley from the Movies on a Monday podcast. Definitely check out that episode. But this one is so Paramount Plus has been out for a little bit, and
neither of us have it yet. But I guess the big draw for me is I guess all Nickelodeon shows, live action and cartoon, are all going to be on there. And for me, I would love to rewatch Kenan and Kel, like all 4 seasons.
Yeah, I like. There are some shows that I know I watched, but I cannot remember anything about them. Like I remember bits and pieces of Salute Your Shorts or All That, or like some of the later ones of like the animated. I remember a little bit more of like Hey Arnold and Doug and things like that.
Yeah. Do you remember Cousin Skeeter, where Skeeter is a puppet and Bill
What?
Bellamy is the main guy?
What? No, I know nothing of this.
I don't know if it's on Paramount Plus, but I hope it is if I get it. If I don't, I still hope it is for other people to watch it. All right. So, Matt, since I have a few and you have one, and I have a feeling that since the way mine are spaced out, I'll probably get close to 20 years once you start us off. What is the Matt Rodenberg pick for the year of TV?
And here's what's so funny about of the big writers' strike we had a decade ago. So the writers' strike took place in 2007, and that's the year I'm picking. Now, Angie, I said kind of this to Angie, and she's like, "Oh, so all the writers like did their best work, and then they all went on strike to get paid more." I'm like, "I guess that's probably it." But I started with like, there's a bunch of these seasons that they get cut short, but like right before that, like they had some really good stuff. So this season of The Office and my favorite season of House, both of those together. And so The Office, yeah, season 4 of House is my favorite. Season 4 of House is at the end of season 3, House fires his whole team. And then everyone's like, wait, what the heck? And so in season 4, he starts off and he has like this huge competition with like 50 people. And so that was so fascinating. And probably the best thing that House did. Honestly, House went downhill after. It still was fine. So I really loved that season of House. And like even the first half of the season, it was better than the second half of the season in 2008. But then The Office, it had season 3. Now, Office, we just barely missed in 2007. We just barely missed the best episode, Benihana Christmas. But that's fine because 2007 still had a lot of great episodes in season 3. It had Jim coming back to the office. Well, he'd already come back, but him like finding his footing again there. Season 4, the beginning of season 4 for The Office was just absolutely hilarious. With the fun run for Dunder Mifflin because he hits Meredith with his car. Just the weird, terrible relationship between Jan and Michael. Yeah. That was just like the worst thing in the world, and watching her fall apart. That was peak Office. Season 3, season 4, like that. Those two things are probably enough to make this my number one year.
Yeah, I agree. That for some reason I thought that this would be only season 4, and that's why I was surprised that you weren't going to pick season 3, but you did pick season 3. I just got the years wrong.
I did. Yeah, like I said, it's really hard because it's like, well, it's half of this season and half of that season. Um, and speaking of half of seasons, this also had Lost. 2007 had Lost season 3 finale. Now, season 3 was a weaker season, but
How
like
dare you? You said
a
that
lot,
before, and I still disagree.
but a lot of the weakness was early on. Like
Yes.
they did this weird thing scheduling wise because seasons 1 and 2, people would get so mad when they'd have to wait like 2 or 3 weeks for new episodes. And so like they threw like 8 episodes together at the very beginning of the season, and then they ended the season all of them together. But they had like 3 months of you waiting in between like episode 8 and 9 or something, and it was awful. Um, but season 3 ended really, really strong, and one of the best episodes of Lost is the season 3 finale, and that's the 2007.
To me, that is the best season of episode of Lost, and I didn't have to worry about that because I actually got into Lost between seasons 3 and 4. So I was able to binge. I bought the DVDs and binge the first 3 seasons all in a row, and then caught up live with season 4.
Smart. You don't know the pain of seasons 1 through 3 and their airing schedules. That was terrible. And for those who are not like familiar, like what happened in season 3? Okay, season 3 finale was spoilers for Lost. It's 10 years old. You're fine. Charlie died. It
Not Penny's boat.
was Penny's boat. Great moment. The flash forward reveal at the very end of the episode.
We have to go back.
Well, yeah. And then it was like they get in touch with the freighter people and like, oh, this freighter is going to come to the island. They're going to save us. Like a lot of great stuff happened at the end of season 3. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, it started off rough. It was a rough beginning. Okay.
Yeah.
But that was 2006. So
there you go.
Now, because Andrew, I'm sure, is sick of me bringing up Chuck, I'll just say that this was the year that Chuck debuted. That's all we need. That started in 2007. This also there's another show that a lot of people probably didn't hear of because it only lasted 1 season. It was a show called Journeyman, and it was kind of like a modern Quantum Leap. And so there was a character, Kevin McKidd, the actor, he played this character that could suddenly time travel. And couldn't really control it, kind of like Time Traveler's Wife. He couldn't control how he'd time travel. He couldn't control how long he'd be in the spots that he'd travel through time at. And all that he would have as indications, he'd start to get like this headache and then like a bright light, and then he'd like, boom, he'd travel through time. So it was very Quantum Leapish. I was so intrigued by the premise. I really liked it. And it only lasted 1 season. But that was 2007. So,
yeah, I've heard of that show. I think I'm pulling up my spreadsheet to see what other shows I have started in 2007. Rules of Engagement, which I thought was pretty funny, and Big Bang Theory, which was funny in the beginning, I thought.
It was funny in the beginning. Yeah, there's another. So I know not everyone likes this, especially not apparently anyone like Dan Harmon or any Community cast because they mock him all the time. But there's a show, According to Jim. I liked According to Jim. It was a funny sitcom. It was on during this time.
Yeah, I only saw a couple episodes of According to Jim, so I can't really talk about it that much, really. Yeah, I mean, even just for those 2 seasons alone of The Office and of House. I mean, those are 2 really good seasons that were on right then.
Yeah. We also have, this is also some prime How I Met Your Mother time too. We, again, barely missed the best episode of How I Met Your Mother, which was the one that introduces both Robin Sparkles and the slap bet.
Yes, I agree. This time we are in complete agreement. That is my all-time favorite episode.
Yeah, it missed that by like 2 or 3 months or something like that. But we do get Lillian Marshall's wedding in 2007.
Okay.
We also get the Slaps Giving the following year from the slap bet. And then we also get Barney is on Price is Right. Such a great How I Met Your Mother moment was him meeting Bob Barker. And it's fitting because 2007 was actually Bob Barker's last season of filming Price is Right. So he was off after 2007. So we did say goodbye to him in that year. What else do I have?
I'm looking something up real quick here.
Sure. While you're doing, another show, you talked about shows that started in 2007. Mad Men debuted. I liked Mad Men a lot early on. I kind of fell away from it as it went on. It just kind of seemed it didn't hold my interest as it continued in seasons, but it started off pretty strong.
This is also 2 good seasons of Survivor in 2007. You got season 15, China, and season 16, Micronesia, the first fans versus favorites. Those are two. If you're going to watch Survivor, those are definitely two seasons that I would recommend.
I did see that, and I was gonna bring it up, but I'm like, I don't know enough about this. But I saw like fans versus favorites, and I'm like, that is probably a really good season. I think I was out.
Yeah, you were out by then.
Yeah.
It had the great moment where Eric, on the final five, gave up his immunity and then gets voted out.
No, I might have been on in that one because I remember that.
Yeah, and it was like the
I
Black
remember
Widow
that.
Brigade with Parvati and Suri
They-
and Amanda.
was that the one where what's the big guy with like the huge beard who was first on like the pirate?
Rupert, he's not on that season.
Rupert. Okay. I remember Rupert. Like he was my favorite probably of all the Survivor contestants. He was probably my favorite.
Just yesterday, me and Anna were watching an episode of Half and Half on Netflix, and all of a sudden, Rupert was in the show. Like, Rupert was in this?
What are you doing here, Rupert? Oh, there was also there was like a resurgence of primetime game shows. This was the third season of Deal or No Deal. Now, like this was the season probably where it stopped with its steam. Like for the first two seasons, people loved Deal or No Deal. It was like a huge, no pun intended, but it was a huge deal to watch Deal or No Deal back then. So this is still on season 3 and still pretty good. And then it kind of after that, people got tired of it. But there's also Don't Forget the Lyrics with Wayne Brady hosting. I really enjoyed that show.
I think I remember that. This was also around the time that I first got into like The Office and Lost, and I think Prison Break and some of these shows. Because I remember this is right after my sister and her husband got married, and we were over at their house, a bunch of us watching the Emmy Awards, and I was like the only one in there who hadn't been watching The Office and Lost and all these shows, and I was like, crap, I gotta start watching all these shows. And then of course I binged the DVDs and got to where I know way more about these shows than any of them. So you got there first, but I got there better.
Take that. I will say, when you brought up Prison Break, this does have the worst season of Prison Break. This is season 3 when they go to that prison in Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
Worst season there.
Agreed.
This is also responsible for introducing the world to Amy Schumer through Last Comic Standing. So
okay.
that does knock down points. But on the other side, this did have Scrubs season 6 and the beginning of season 7. And in season 6, we had the episode My Musical. Yep. That's the one. On January 18th. That was the note. I'm like, what is this note that I wrote? I just wrote the date of it, January 18th, My Musical. Final thing, 30 Rock. We don't talk a lot about this, but 30 Rock is a really good show. It's one of those that I haven't watched since I watched it on when it aired, but I really enjoyed it. Like Alec Baldwin's character of Jack Donaghy is such a good TV character.
Yeah.
He plays it so well. And Tina Fey has tremendous writing. The problem I've only had with 30 Rock is it has like it's like 2 or 3 of the characters are like really annoying. The other characters are great.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard with a show when you've got something like, I just wish, like Jenna, I wish that her character didn't exist. I understand the point of her character, but I laughed at like maybe 3 or 4 things in its entire run that Jenna had said. So
Jenna in 30 Rock is the equivalent of Miss Piggy in the 2015 Muppet Show.
I will take your word for it.
That show had some great moments, and like I'm not discounting it, and like Uncle Deadly is the greatest thing to come out of that show, but overall, like I don't like the direction they're taking with Miss Piggy nowadays. But yeah, watch that show, she definitely gives you Jenna Maroney vibes.
Well, that's it. That is why 2007 is the best. Like I said, started off Office and House are like the best seasons there, and then there's a lot of other good stuff going on.
All right.
Was this year on your list, or was it close to another one?
It was actually directly between my top 2. So I'm actually going to go back, because if I go forward, we're going to be talking about some of these shows again. I'm going to take you back 4 years prior to 2003.
Okay.
So I got a big list. So first of all, going back to Survivor, you got both Survivor, the Amazon, which I still think people always talk about Boston Rob from Survivor. I still think the best Rob is Rob Cesternino, who at that time Jeff Probst called the best player to never win. He was the final jury member, and like this was a strategic mastermind that game had never seen by that point. And then following it, season 7 was Pearl Island, which is where you get Rupert and
There you
Sandra
go.
and Johnny Fairplay with the dead grandma.
Oh
And
my gosh, Johnny Fairplay. That's a name I have not thought about for like a decade at least.
he's a podcaster. He still posts about Survivor, and it's interesting. I still hear him every now and then during the Survivor seasons. I listen to him. We also have seasons 3 and 4 of Gilmore Girls, which is right in the Milo years for Jess, which I think is the best years. Before the show got tainted with Logan existing, which no one needs.
Yep.
You say yep like you know what I'm talking about.
I'm just gonna let you go through this one. I'm not. I'm gonna stay off the Gilmore Girls conversation.
All right, sounds good. Well, I'll jump back in. This is the end. You can jump back in for the end of Friends 9 and 10. A lot of people don't like the later seasons, but I still think there's a lot of good stuff. Like like Dana DeVito as a stripper in season 10 of Scrubs.
Oh yeah, I like Greg. We talked about this when we talked about the celebrity cameos. I like Greg Kinnear's cameo in there, and I liked Aisha Taylor's recurring character. I thought she was,
and even Anna Faris was funny.
Yeah, I mean, with Aisha Taylor too, it's like this is like diversity that they needed for a while, and it's good that they had a black recurring character for a couple episodes at least. So
it only took them 9 years.
It only took them 9 years, but they got there.
This is early on. This is Scrubs 2 and 3 when they were still hitting their stride. I don't remember the exact. This was, I think, it wasn't during the one episode on which I think the My Lunch, which is your favorite, but this also has the one where Brendan Fraser dies, which is a good, like one of their first big emotional moments.
Yeah, that's a really good episode.
2003 had seasons 2 and 3 of 24. Back before they ruined it with Jack's family drama. Like back with the original lineup with Tony and Michelle and President Palmer.
He's still angry, guys. He's still angry.
And then the show is like, I don't know exactly where they rank, where they file them that fall in here, but there's That 70 Show and Everybody Loves Raymond. And as long as it's not the last season of That 70 Show, then it's still good TV.
Yeah, that was a season 6 was at the end of or beginning of 2003. So in between season 5 and 6.
Yeah, so that was still in the heyday of that being a good show. And if you jump over to Disney Channel, what I think is the best trifecta of Disney Channel shows, Lizzie McGuire, Even Stevens, and That's So Raven.
Yeah.
This is before Zach and Cody had The Sweet Life, before there were Wizards in Waverly Place, before girls were meeting worlds. We had these 3 shows.
Which are much better. Although, if we watched them now with like the same eye, or it's gonna be hard to you can't. There's so much nostalgia in some of these shows. Like we talked before we started recording about like old school Nickelodeon leading up into like the Paramount Plus we were talking about, and just some of those shows, like if you watched them now for the first time, you'd probably be like, what the heck is this crap? But they were like reverent for us. They were amazing TV.
First thing I did when I got Disney Plus was binge the entire series of Even Stevens and Lizzie McGuire, and they both hold up.
I watched all of the 90s animated Spider-Man show.
Oh, yeah, you're telling me about
that. That holds up in terms of like the comic, because like they really branched out. They brought in a lot of comic book characters. They start with like their big leading ones, but then like we need to get more, and they eventually get into like Doctor Strange territory and all this stuff, and then like you're like really good deep canon stuff. So.
Yeah. And then there's even more with 2003. If you jump into the next category, which I put as like after school / Nick at Night, you got 8 Simple Rules, Reba, Grounded for Life, George Lopez, and Malcolm in the Middle, which I think are all 5 solid shows.
Yeah. Well, we talked about George Lopez show and how that's really to me it's just such an underrated show. It's really, really funny, and it doesn't get the acclaim that it should.
Neither does 8 Simple Rules. I mean, they can't help that John Ritter died during a rehearsal, but that show, even after he died with James Garner and David Spade, that was a funny show. And it was Kaylee Cuoco before Big Bang Theory. That's another show. I don't have the 3rd season, but I have the first 2 seasons of that on DVD.
Yeah, I like those actors. I don't think I ever really watched that show, but like I like James Garner and David Spade with the right material. Like him on Just Shoot Me. Just Shoot Me was a really funny show. I really enjoyed it. They had really well written characters. And like that's a show that I would laugh all the time at. And David Spade was good in it. And then David Spade made all these movies with Adam Sandler in like the last 10 years, and like none of them are good. So depends on what his role is.
Yeah. The impressive thing about David Spade is that, you know, back in the 90s, well, he made Tommy Boy and Black Sheep, and he was kind of really becoming a comedy pairing with Chris Farley. And then obviously Chris Farley passed away, and he still managed to have a career. Like a lot of times if I mean, you gotta admit, in those movies, Chris Farley was the big draw. If the big funny man draw dies, a lot of times it's hard for the supporting player to really find their own footing. But I think he did. Definitely.
Yeah. And especially with Emperor's New Groove, which is like the role he was born to play. Like there is no other role of his that was as tremendous as Emperor's New Groove, when you're like, hey, you're actually very talented.
Yeah. So I mean, just looking at 2003, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 shows that we just talked about, all that were airing in 2003. And most of these I was actually watching live in 2003. I think all except for Scrubs and 24 I hadn't gotten into yet, but everything else I was watching.
I've also brought up this show before, but 2003 had the end of season 2 and the beginning of season 3 of Smallville. And Smallville really found its footing at the end of season 2 going into season 3. And it had a very strong season 3 and season 4. So like this is when it really started knowing what it was and being able to give us, like, season 3 started off with Clark being in Metropolis because he was just so distraught over his past and his ship creating something that caused his mom to miscarriage. And so, you know, like he just ran away and he just buried himself. And his dad had to make a deal with Jor-El to go get him and bring him from Metropolis. So his dad got the same powers of Superman and had a fight with his son who was running away. And it was a really great start to the season. And season 3 was really good. Yeah.
All right. So I have 2 more that I'd like to just briefly talk about real quick. I'm going to jump forward, then jump back.
Okay.
So we did 2007, 2003. I'm actually going to cheat. And it's going to be a season. It's going to be fall 2010 going into spring of 2011, that TV season.
So real quick, my other year that I was going to bring up was 2010. Okay. So I can bring some stuff. I don't know. I didn't do what you did for cheating, so I don't know exactly where some of my stuff is. I didn't record it super well, but you go ahead and start talking and I can jump in with other stuff.
All right. Well, let's start with, we already talked about The Office. The Office is on season 7 at this point, which season 7 has a lot of great episodes. There's Threat Level Midnight. You got the garage sale, which kind of starts the trio of Daryl, Kevin, and Andy. I forget what else is there. The viewing party where they have the pizza party at Gabe's house. They're watching Glee. I thought that was a really funny episode, and it really sets up the Michael and Aaron relationship.
Yep. I will say for my 2010, I did know that has the end of season 6 and the beginning of season 7. And that missed the big, I kind of felt that time was a little bit of The Office coasting, because we barely missed towards the beginning of season 6, the Jim and Pam's wedding, which is a great episode.
Yeah.
And that towards the end of season 7, with all the stuff with Holly and, like you said, Threat Level Midnight, and especially Michael's goodbye, all of that's really good. But none of that is in 2010. That's all in 2009 or 2011. So this is kind of like the worst part in between those.
Oh, yeah.
While Michael is still there.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that then after that, it's hit and miss. But in addition to The Office, you get Parks and Rec season 3, which I always tell people, if you're going to start season Parks and Rec, start with season 3. It even starts with a recap at the beginning, and then go back. And there's maybe a handful of episodes in season 2 that I think are great, but otherwise season 3 on.
Like the one, I don't remember what nation it was, but their sister city.
Oh, yes.
Their government officials straight to jail. If chicken is overcooked, straight to jail. Undercooked, straight to jail.
With Fred Armisen? Yeah. That one is good. The one with Andy Samberg is good, and the hunting one is good.
Oh, yeah. Hunting one's a good one, too.
Parks and Rec season 3. You get Community season 2.
Hold on. Before you move on to Community, one thing that I really liked in Parks and Rec in season 3 is it's one of my favorite even moments of Parks and Rec, a lot of shows like they have this tension and that the tension builds for multiple episodes. And in comedies, it's not as tense, but there's still like you want to see them succeed. Season 3, they had when they showed the Harvest Festival, they ended the episode with like a very feel good on top. They let you see what this team created, and they let you have the same joy that like Leslie and all of the town felt of having this Harvest Festival actually go off well. And I love that they did that, because not enough shows are like, wait, we need to pause and give them this win, and they definitely did.
A great moment in the Harvest Festival episode also is April's mad at Andy because she says, I love you. And he says, dude, that's awesome sauce. And at the end, he says, well, of course I love you too. That's what makes the sauce so awesome.
This is also the introduction of the nice running gag of everyone loving Lil Sebastian and Ben just not getting it.
Mm-hmm. And he's got no help. Like even Ron, who is sometimes a stoic guy, like he is like, show some respect.
That was a great choice for a gag. It was really funny.
And then is it Community season 2, which whether you think it jumped the shark in season 3, like you say, or season 4, like I say, either way, season 2 of Community, it has not jumped the shark yet. It's still a great show.
Yep.
Yet, what was it? The Popeyes chicken one, KFC chicken spaceship.
Oh yeah. Which is a nice. It's so weird that that's how they went. Like they're like, we're gonna parody the right stuff. We're gonna do it with KFC and a chicken flight simulator. Like, where do you come up with this?
Well, you have to start out with a really interesting, compelling like movie, and you have to back. What would Greendale's version of this be?
That's true. That's man, but getting that point, that's a weird landing spot.
It was shortly after this point that they made the correct decision of making Jim Rash a series regular, because he just kills it.
Oh yeah.
Also at this point you have How I Met Your Mother season 6. I don't know exactly where that lines up, but again, pretty much everything pre-season 9 for How I Met Your Mother is great in my opinion.
Season 6 had a really good arc that I personally really liked. It was when they introduced Zoe, and then Ted not like him wanting to tear down the Arcadia Hotel.
Oh yeah,
and build the new building. I thought that was a really good, coherent storyline that I was really intrigued by. Plus, we got to see the Blitz in that too. We got introduced to that.
Oh yeah, How I Met Your Mother was also my first exposure to Bob Odenkirk, because he was Marshall's boss.
In 2010 though, talking about the end of season 5 had really good stuff, especially at the end, because at the end they introduced doppelgangers.
Oh yeah.
And so that, like, there's that whole thing about Marshall and Lily. Well, we'll start trying to have a kid once we see Barney's doppelganger. And season 5, early on in season 5, had one of the better episodes, or one of the better moments, really, where they did the countdown to Marshall's dad dying.
Oh yeah.
So we barely missed that in 2010. And then there's one really cool thing that I liked, is the synergy between stations. So CBS hosted the Super Bowl that year. And during the Super Bowl, they cut to the audience, and in the audience is Neil Patrick Harris and Barney Stinson. Maybe they filmed this ahead of time or something, but Neil Patrick Harris as Barney Stinson in the audience, holding up a sign that has a cell phone number on it. And then they had an episode after the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
He was in character, and like they were watching the Super Bowl, they saw Barney there, and like, what is Barney doing there? And then now he's getting all these phone calls for like these booty calls, but every time he's gonna like follow up on one of them, then he gets another call. It's like, oh, it's even better. That was a really funny episode and a great way to tie in the Super Bowl into it.
I bet they did just film that at the Super Bowl, because they could have filmed the rest of the episode and then just waited to insert that one shot of him in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm not sure exactly how they did that, but that makes the most sense to me.
Well, that's like in This Is Us, when like it was aired right after the Super Bowl, and Rebecca was watching the Super Bowl, and you see a clip of the game they just played.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. 2010, 2011 also had Modern Family and Breaking Bad.
Yep.
2 very different shows. Yeah.
Breaking Bad, that was a great season. So this is season 3 was in 2010, and their season was actually over summer. So that was all of 2010. So you can talk about the entire season. But season 3 introduced Gus, and he is such a dynamic character. Mm-hmm. And it also had a really good Breaking Bad moment. There is one episode where one of the most pivotal things happens to the character Hank, and he gets this phone call when he's in the car and in the parking lot of the police station, and it's like some muffled voice saying, "You have 1 minute, and then you're going to be attacked by these two cartel twins."
Oh
And
yeah.
at first she's like, "Oh, who's pranking me?" But like this whole scene just does suspense super well. He does get attacked, and he's able to fight off these guys, and it's like a 10-minute scene as he's able to fight them off. But it's not like an action sequence. It's like really like this guy is ambushed, and it's desperation of trying to get out of here, even though he's already shot or hurt. He's still going to take these guys out with him and save his life. It was really well shot. One of my favorite Breaking Bad moments.
Yeah, I wish I had watched that. I actually didn't get into Breaking Bad till like maybe 5 years ago, so I got to binge the entire thing without waiting. But yeah, that would have been terrible to have to wait every week for that show.
I got into it in season 4, so I think it was season 5 that they split into 2. So it's like 5 and 6, but it really was, they called it one season. So I was almost at that spot. I binged all of the early season, and then it was the final one that I was like, "Oh, I can't wait for the next week."
That's all I really had for 2010, 2011. Do you have anything else for that?
This was the end of season 3 for Chuck and the beginning of season 4. Some of my favorite episodes of Chuck are at the end of season 3, and then at the beginning of season 4 was introducing Lyndall Hamilton as a recurring guest star.
Oh, yeah.
And Timothy Dalton. He was hilarious. The last episode of Chuck in 2010 was the one at Thanksgiving, where he ends up coming to their house, and how they quickly turned like that whole thing around, where at first is like he comes to get Lyndall Hamilton and he's threatening them and like he's being a villain, and then it's like, "Oh wait, you're family? Well, we have to spend Thanksgiving together." And just this complete heel turn. It showed so many aspects of how Timothy Dalton can act, and it was just really funny how quickly it turned around.
That was a funny moment. Like Devin and Blinky and his sister, Devin and Ellie, didn't know what was going on. They thought this was just a friend of their mom's. And you see Chuck go to Devin and very casually be like, "By the way, this guy's a terrorist. You got to go to my apartment and alert the police." And he's like, "What the crap? Your spy stuff keeps coming to our house."
Yeah, and they're having this conversation just a little bit away from the action, where Timothy Dalton's character is doing charades, and so like to make it seem like nothing weird is happening and they're not like planning behind his back, Chuck guesses the movie up, Born Identity, and he's like, "No." And so then like they're talking, Devin and Chuck's like, "You need to guess something or else he's gonna get suspicious." And Devin's all panicked. He's like, "Oh, Born Identity." And they all just look at him like, "You idiot." And then Timothy Dalton keeps doing the charade.
All right.
A couple other things for 2010 had season 7, which is when we finally got House and Cuddy together.
Okay.
So like I said, House had gone downhill by then, but at least there was that fan service because people had been shipping that relationship for the whole time that show was on. And then this was also the final season of Lost as well. It was in 2010 going into 2011. No, I'm sorry. 2009 going into 2010. So the last like 5 episodes were in 2010.
Yeah, we were watching the final season of Lost. The only way I was able to watch it, I was at North Central at the time. I'm not sure if you were as well, but pretty much I had to, like, in the Carlson Common area in the basement, people would gather to watch Lost on the TVs. So I basically had to just watch Lost in the dorm common area with a bunch of strangers because it's the only way I could watch it.
Yeah. So I got married on May 22nd of 2010. And the finale of Lost aired on May 23rd, 2010. So on the way back from Rushford up to the cities, we stop at Target and use some of our wedding money to buy a TV for our apartment. And then we get there and make sure it's set up so we can watch the finale of Lost that night. And then the next morning we go on our honeymoon. So there you go. There's our timeline for life.
There you go. I remember your wedding.
Wasn't it great?
I suppose I don't remember that much.
You can't just drop. "I remember your wedding," and then I ask you a follow-up and nothing.
Well, you got married and you're still married, so obviously it went well.
All right, fine, whatever. All right, what's your other?
You know what, Matt? At least I was at your wedding.
That's true. Hey, shut up. I don't remember why I wasn't at yours, but whatever.
But
I was at your brother-in-law's wedding, so
What does that count?
It's close enough.
Yeah. Actually, that was for a second there. I was thinking, wait, which brother-in-law? Like, oh yeah, the last one that we were actually that was before a couple days ago. That was the last time that we actually saw each other was at that wedding.
Yeah. You know, the brother-in-law that married into my family, that one.
Yep, that one. Gotcha. All right. So I got to jump right back into the 90s, specifically
Perfect.
1996. Great year for TV. Great year for the TGIF lineup because you had the beginning of shows like Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Muppets Tonight, which was a short-lived, only lasted 2 seasons. It was a really good show. It introduced characters like Pepe and Bobo the Bear. Both came from that Muppets Tonight in '96.
And as you know, one of my favorite characters is Bobo the Bear.
Mm-hmm. He is like the best part of the worst Muppet movie, The Muppets from Space. And out of all the characters that were introduced in Muppets Tonight, those are the only 2 that are still being used today, and they're both performed by Bill Beretta.
Nice.
Yeah, it started Sabrina the Teenage Witch, started Muppets Tonight. We still have Family Matters and Roseanne, Step by Step, and Boy Meets World. And in Boy Meets World, we're getting into season 3, which is kind of the turning point from the first couple seasons being kind of more little kiddish with like mini Corey. This is when he kind of gets his voice dropped and it kind of becomes more of a teen show.
Sure.
Starting with season 3. On kind of the more kids TV show, you're still in the middle of All That with Kenan and Kel, and also Kenan and Kel. That both All That and Kenan and Kel were starting. And then for Power Rangers, you get right at the end of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, right into Power Rangers Zeo, which is a great time period because a lot happens. If people don't realize this, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the last thing you see in that show is the command center exploding and the Power Rangers lose their powers.
That's not good.
Nope. And then it jumps right into Power Rangers Zeo, and then they get new powers and they keep going. But it's like, yeah, technically the end of that series ends with them losing.
And then 1 week later, after Power Rangers Zeo debuted, was the debut of Dexter's Laboratory on Cartoon Network.
Did you just look that up, or did you know that?
I looked that up. I'm looking through 1996 right now.
Gotcha. It was also the start of both Everybody Loves Raymond and Third Rock from the Sun, which are both great sitcoms. And we're still in the middle of early years of Friends. I'm not sure exactly what season, but I want to say maybe 3 or 4.
Yeah. It also had was the debut of, now there's a bad taste in our mouth because of this person, but the second version of the Cosby Show, Just Cosby, that one was a shorter lived one, but that had Dougie Doug. That was a good show. I enjoyed it. I thought Bill Cosby was hilarious. Too bad he's a terrible person.
Yeah, exactly. I was debating going back to 1990, and you could talk about the Cosby Show, but I was going to kind of mainly focus on Raven-Symoné because that was when she was on the Cosby Show.
Yep.
Oh yeah, Third Rock from the Sun. We haven't talked about the show. Did you watch that show?
I saw a couple of episodes.
It's the gimmick of it kind of gets old after a little while, but the performances are so funny. Like John Lithgow, like he's one of those guys that can make anything funny. And this is the origin, kind of the origin of Joseph Gordon-Levitt when he was a kid being on that show. Because he was a kid.
Excuse me, the origin of Joseph Gordon-Levitt was Angels in the Outfield, sir.
TV wise.
Okay.
Because the thing is, he said he played a kid, but the thing is that they're aliens, and they say that he's technically the oldest of them. And so like there's this really awkward moment when he starts flirting with Jane Curtin. It's like a 50-year-old woman and a 14-year-old boy. But he's like, but I'm actually old. And it's just like, it's a confusing storyline, but it actually works.
Yes. Yeah. Ooh. This also had on the same day both oh wait, no, never mind. I'm sorry. I'm looking at a wrong thing. Ignore what I just said. Just keep going.
We can always ignore what Matt says.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But like going into Boy Meets World, it has one of the best episodes, I think, Rave On, where Corey and Eric try to throw a rave, and then they end up trying to also throw their parents a anniversary party, and it ends up having to combine the two parties, so it's like a rave / their parents' anniversary. And then throughout the episode, we also get cameos from 3 of the 4 monkeys.
I must be mixing this up because like you started talking about like 2 different things, and I must be missing up that one where they where Corey wanted to go to like this wrestling match, and then also to be at like this other event for like Topanga or whatever.
It was Topanga's birthday, and then it was
That's right.
also Frankie getting reunited with his dad. The episode's called 16 Candles and 400 Pound Men. And I did know
Of
that
course
off the
you
top of
know
my
that.
head. Yep.
Of course you know that.
Well, that's another great episode, but that's in season 4. That would be 1997, so I can't talk about that here.
Okay, I'm sorry. Keep going.
Oh no, I was saying it's cool because it's such a random thing. Like it's a show in the 90s for teen kids. Like, what topical band are we gonna get? Let's get the Monkees.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, their debut the show. Okay, I don't know many people who remember it, but I watched it a bunch as a kid and I loved it. So it's a show called Kablam. Do you remember that?
I remember hearing about it. I don't know if I ever watched it.
I don't know I don't know how I can even describe this. It's like an animated sketch comedy show that was on Nickelodeon, and Kablam, like it's hosted by like these two characters that are like comic book characters type. But then there's a lot of different sketches. I just remember it was hilarious. And then what was like the most popular? Action League Now was the more common the sketch that they had, where it's like there are these 4 heroes and one of them was the Flesh, who's like the strong guy but he's naked. By the way, these are all like action figures that they had. And there was like Thunder Girl, there was quote unquote Stinky Diver, who was like a French guy that smelled really bad. And then there was Melt Man, who was like this action figure that got left in like microwave for too long or something like that, and then he was melty. I don't remember much of it. I just remember like this show spoke to, I don't know how old I was, but little kid me, it really spoke to me back then. So
okay, interesting.
I did a terrible job of explaining that. You're like, I don't want to see this at all, but none of that sounds good at all.
No, it sounds like interesting. And so that was that Nickelodeon? You said
that was Nickelodeon.
Maybe it'll be on Paramount Plus.
Hey, it might.
So if you don't have anything else, I think we can jump into trivia.
Oh, one thing I did want to talk about. This was the year that really, honestly, for good or bad, changed the way that we have news. Because in 1996, it was the debut of The Daily Show.
Oh,
and The Daily Show has really changed completely the way that we view news. It mixed comedy and entertainment with news. And because it did that, people watched it more, especially like a younger generation. They watched it more than they would watch like actual news programming. So they're staying informed, but they're also being entertained. And kind of that line between entertainment and actual journalism got more and more blurred over the years. And even though it was a good idea at the time, like now we see some of the repercussions of it. And it's so hard to really know like what's true news, because with that entertainment piece, you want to get all this clickbait and all this sort of stuff. So they're all about these views, and they're all about, well, we need people to watch what we need to entertain them while we're telling them news, and we have to embellish sometimes. And there's all that crap. So, that's The Daily Show, guys. That's their fault, for good or for bad. 1996.
Definitely made news more interesting.
It did. Speaking of news more interesting than 1996, there's also the OJ trial in 96.
I thought that was 94.
So that was on TV. I don't know. That's just what I was reading. So I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Okay. Sounds good. So Matt, you had last week's trivia question that I don't know the answer, so I can't tell people.
I did. So in the show Firefly, wait, did we even come up with a trivia question for this week?
Yeah, I got one.
Okay, thank God. All right. So in the show Firefly, there was a reference to a company that was used in another science fiction franchise. And what was that franchise? It was Alien/Aliens/ Alien Resurrection, all those movies, which Joss Whedon, by the way, directed Alien Resurrection, and he went on to produce Firefly. So that's why we see that reference. But there's a gun that Malcolm is using in one of the wars, and that, like, as he's looking through the view scope, the war that he fought in, as he's looking through the view scope, it shows the emblem and the words for the Weyland-Yutani Corp, which is the big corporation that's behind all of the the salvaging for Alien and aliens and why they end up coming across this stuff in the first place. And they even make a reference to this in the movie Serenity. They make a reference to the slogan of the company, building better worlds. So that's kind of like the mantra of the bad guy of Serenity, as he talks about building better worlds. So yeah, it was the definitely influence of that from Alien in that franchise.
All right. So we didn't really talk about the show. I just mentioned it in passing. But one of the shows I said that started in 1996 was Sabrina the Teenage Witch. There was in season one, only season one of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, there was a regular cast member who went on to be a very famous director who has directed movies that I'm sure you've all heard of. So the question is, what famous director had a regular role on Sabrina the Teenage Witch?
I never watched it, so I don't know. For me, it was Clarissa Explains It All or nothing.
Well, there's also Melissa and Joey, which was okay, which came in like 2015.
Angie watched some of that, and I don't remember watching it. So I don't think I can give an opinion.
Sounds good. So, and you've already talked a little bit about what we're doing next, which will be our WandaVision recap.
Yeah, we're recording that this Sunday, and just thinking of how the schedule is going down, it's probably going to debut before this episode because we'll want to keep it as close as we can to when WandaVision actually aired. So I don't know what we're doing next week. We'll figure that out and let you know.
So we've totally watched WandaVision. You know how the big thing happens that we totally know about because we're not recording this before WandaVision finished?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, what a season finale that was.
Hopefully it'll be good.
I do know what we're going to talk about. Because we had talked about this, that we're going to talk about New Girl. I don't know what topic we're going to decide on with it, but we'll talk about New Girl.
Sounds good. This is for a very specific audience who doesn't actually listen to our podcast, but
she said she would listen if we did a New Girl episode, and New Girl's a freaking great show, so we have no problem talking about it.
Oh, I can definitely come up with New Girl stuff. A lot of Winston talk. I'm going to talk about Winston no matter what we talk about, unless the topic is don't talk about Winston.
And even then, you might talk about Winston.
Yeah, I'd break that rule for sure.
Well, that was it. Let us know what you like for TV years. We missed. I know there's a lot. There's so many different great shows and great eras. Mm-hmm. And we talked a lot about like the modern era, but there's some really good stuff in the 90s. There's some really good stuff way before that. There's some good stuff in the freaking 60s, guys. So what would you think is the best year for TV shows? What did you think about the shows we talked about? Any better seasons than the ones we said? Let us know. We have follow us on Twitter at TVGuys1 or on Facebook.
Or you can email us at tvguyspodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you for saying that because I don't remember the email address, so that's why I paused. We didn't plan it, but you caught when I was laying down. Oh well. For next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And remind you to stay tuned and keep watching.